The executive director. Thank you. Everybody press the got it button. I'm the executive director of the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society, and welcome to the fourth cohort of Broadband Breakthrough. Your prior colleagues are marked in red on the map, and we'll put a map up in the slideshow later that will show you all the people who are involved in the program this time. I want to recognize our program partners in this endeavor, the Reid Consulting Group, and also Illinois Extension, and also say that this would not be possible without the support of the Illinois Broadband Lab in coordination with the Department of Commerce's and Economic Opportunities Office of Broadband. Let's go to the next slide, Reid. Thanks. So here I am. Welcome and introductions. Reid and I are going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to turn it over to our county leaders. Just to share your broadband story or a fun fact about your county, a couple minutes each would be great. Then we're going to do a broadband 101. So look, I understand a lot of you, Adam just said, I've been at this for 4 years. Well, hopefully, Tom will take you through even some things that you might not know, but we do try to keep this at a very basic level since there are many people on this call who don't have the sophistication that some of you do who've been at this for a while. So I really enjoy this myself. I will say I always learn something. Then Nancy is going to talk about your the launch of your community survey, which is the first activity that we have for all of the teams to start. And your survey will go on for the first 6 to 7 weeks of the program, simultaneous to the sessions that we're going to hold across the 12 weeks that they're meeting. And then we'll leave some time for Q&A. This is a session that will run probably the full 90 minutes. There will be others that are closer to 1 hour. We have reserved the 90 minutes just because sometimes these things do run over. Next, please, Reid. I think it's actually over to you. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I'll be brief. Like we said, we got a lot to get through today. But just for those of you who maybe weren't on any of our promotional calls, just to give you a really quick rundown of what the Broadband Breakthrough Program does and where it comes from. So the Benton Institute has been running similar community engagement programs for years now, on few under a different name. But this program is kind of the culmination of work in dozens of counties in several states across the country. So and many in Illinois. I think now we're at around half of the counties in Illinois we'll have worked with at the end of this program. And so yeah, we combine experience from those programs, and now are excited to add for the first time in Illinois the expertise from the Reid Consulting Group, who you'll hear from shortly from Tom. And he'll, I'm sure, run you through a little bit about the data analysis products and deliverables that you'll receive from them. And finally, direct engagement with the Illinois Office of Broadband and the Illinois Broadband Lab is at the forefront of the program as well. As Adrienne said, this all would not be possible without the support of the Illinois Broadband Lab. And we have some folks from both the Broadband Lab and the office on this call, I believe, who are always around to help and answer questions. So we're really excited to kick this off with you all, and excited to learn about your counties and all of you. So I'll move on from there and just briefly look at the schedule. So we have 12 weeks. You'll see there's a webinar column. The Y and N is just if there's a webinar. If there is not a webinar, all of the webinars will take place on Wednesdays. There are a couple spots where we've had to shift the time to 10 a.m. and that's because of one of our partners from Illinois State University teaches a class at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. So we've accommodated and pushed those to 10 a.m. And we know not everyone's going to be able to make every webinar. All of these are recorded, as you saw at the beginning of the call. So feel free to watch them on your own time, ask questions afterwards, and just it's about providing your best effort to make these sessions, but if not, watch the content afterwards. So you'll see the rundown there. We're starting today on week 1 with the orientation, Broadband 101. And then we move on from there. Survey distribution is our first task. Then we move into the broadband situational assessments, which will be individual meetings with each county, not a webinar. Then a couple more webinars. And then we're into another set of individual meetings with each county where we will assist in meetings with ISPs where hopefully we'll be applying for Connect Illinois Round 4 in each of your counties. And then we're approaching the end of the program, week 11 and week 12, where we'll wrap up with a final presentation highlighting the processes that each of your counties will have gone through at that point. With that, I'll move on to show off the counties in this cohort. And I think it's back to Adrienne.
Yes, so this is where I pick on some of you, and if you got on the call early, you knew that I was going to ask you to do just a couple of minutes, 2 to 3 minutes on your county. And Michelle Spiva from Fulton, if you're on, if you could unmute, I would just love to have you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Fulton County.
Hello. So I am with the Spoon River Partnership, and so we do economic development for all of Fulton County. And so it's mainly the Lewistown area, which is our county seat, that is saying that the map is wrong. The map says there is decent coverage in Lewistown area, and the citizens of Lewistown are saying that that is incorrect, that their children can't do their schoolwork properly and people can't get good connections there. And so the majority of the people on our team here today are from the Lewistown area. And so we're hoping that once we get the project started and once we get community surveys out there, that we'll get some more interest from some of the other more rural areas like Astoria and Avon and some of those other areas that might not understand what the project is and what it can do for their areas.
Thank you, Michelle. Really appreciate you and your team being on. Is Matthew Myers from Lake County here? Matthew?
Hi, Adrienne. It's Betsy Brandon from
Hey,
Lake
Betsy.
County. Hi.
Yes, how are you? Nice to see you. Thank you
Nice
for
to see
jumping
you.
in here. I really
Yes.
appreciate it.
No problem. Hello, everyone. My name is Betsy Brandon. I'm assistant to the county administrator here at Lake County. And Lake County has been working on broadband and some digital equity work for quite some time now. Since 2022, our county board members took an interest in it after hearing from their constituents that internet was unreliable, and then also during the pandemic, hearing about all of the stories of people not being able to access the internet at home and needing to go to parking lots when it's the middle of winter and to go to school and to take their healthcare appointments. So our county board has been really invested. They created a special committee on broadband, and then from there we used ARPA funds to invest in a plan for the county to address digital equity. But because the maps show that we have 98, 99% coverage, it just doesn't necessarily match up with what we're hearing from people. And so I know that, we have staff, we have a lot of community partners, and many of them are on the call today. So we are doing some digital equity initiatives and some slight broadband work, but we're really interested in continuing to expand that work and hearing from the community directly on what's going on in Lake County.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thank
Do
you.
I have anybody from Macoupin on? And if I don't, I fess up that it's because we made a mistake and contacted the wrong person. So anybody from Macoupin on? Completely understandable. Okay, we will move on to Marshall. How about Travis McClasson?
Yes, hi, good morning. I'm Travis Glass, I'm the Vice Chairman of the Marshall County Board, and also kind of heading up our county project here. I mean, I think that we're at the very early stages of this. I mean, we've not done a ton of work prior to being engaged in this process, and only found out about it kind of, well, I mean, I'm sure there's communication on it, but we kind of fell into this a little bit by virtue of some organizations we are participating in for economic development, and also the fact that we've had some private entities reach out for us, I think are also bidding on or asking for grant funds from maybe a different funding mechanism that's related to this. So I think we're just interested in making sure that we can do whatever we can to make sure that whatever implementation of broadband in the county is done completely and done well. We've got a history of, being a relatively small county of roughly 13,000 people. We've got a history of being underserved in our rural areas for things like, public utilities like telephone service and that kind of thing. And so we're a little concerned about, companies kind of coming in and implementing their own project and not having any kind of visibility or oversight from the county, and then kind of leaving the people high and dry a few years down the road, because that's definitely happened for other utilities. So we're excited to be a part of this. We're hoping that we can learn a lot from it, and hopefully make sure that we can get some projects completed that will cover all of our affected citizens and improve the quality of life and the quality of internet service in the county. So.
Thank you, Travis. And I will say that it was, I think, the Illinois Waterways Commission that worked to try to get several of the counties who are on this call, those of you who are up against some of the major rivers in Illinois and are seeing products moved through your counties. The Illinois Waterways Commission, of course, is very interested in having better broadband to facilitate all of that economic activity. So thanks, Travis, for being here and for recruiting your team. Really appreciate it. Adam Latondra from McHenry.
Good morning. Good to see everyone again. Yeah, we're McHenry County, for those of you that might not know. We're the sixth largest county by population in the state. Much like our neighbors to the east, Lake County, we're considered 97% served by the state. However, when the information came around Thanksgiving, it changed the perspective a little bit. We were listed as the fifth highest number of broadband serviceable locations that were unserved or underserved. And we were number one in the amount of community anchor institutions that were unserved and underserved. So our geography tells a different story than the map, is what we believe. I'd like to say we have a really good cohort. I want to thank Mark Picos with the McHenry County Economic Development Corporation and Jamie Marovich from the United Way of Greater McHenry County, who are kind of co-chairing with me. We put this together. We're also excited to have the City of Woodstock District 200, the McHenry County Council of Governments, the County Emergency Telephone System Board. They're all here today. And we've got even more partners that aren't able to make it. The City of Harvard, for example, Scott Forge Corporation in McHenry County as well. So like I said, we've been at this for about 4 years. We started with our own plan to put a fiber optic backbone up and down McHenry County, kind of going along right through the middle of the county, Route 47. That fell by the wayside when we had probably no less than 5 vendors, private company vendors, come in and say, hey, you don't need to do this. We're looking for Connect Illinois funding. We're looking for BEAD funding. And they've really come out of the woodwork. So we're kind of just looking to use this to get over that last hump to hopefully get, really, we're a heavily suburban, somewhat unique in that we're heavily suburban to the east and the south, but we are extremely rural in the west and north central parts of the county. So there's some not necessarily hard to serve, but some difficult to access places. So we're definitely looking forward to going through this. And like I said, we're hoping this gets us over the hump to complete broadband in McHenry County.
Thank you, Adam. Really great that you're here. Okay, Bill Montgomery from Montgomery, and I do know you're on the call, Bill.
Good morning, all. Yes, over the hump is a good word for us as well. I'm the executive director of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, and I've been working with the county board, and we're interested in this final getting some help with connecting with ISP providers primarily. There is a firm that's built a number of towers in our county in the last year or so, but they've been very light on their communication with us anyhow on what their intentions are with this last step, getting over the hump and connecting with customers. And while the towers are there, we have a lot of predominantly agricultural county, as I mentioned, that are underserved or unserved. And we want to make sure that we can get this final part of the equation completed and connected. And, I think that I'll just real quickly add that those of us that live in municipalities have been served and have kind of grown up with internet access as it's developed in the last 10, 20 years. But those that are in our rural areas are not as fortunate. And it's important that, at least to us, that everyone has an opportunity for fast, reliable access to the internet. That's really going to be a game changer for a lot of folks, and we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to connect.
Thank you, Bill. And Jamie Jamie Beasley from Pike County, you're the last speaker.
Okay, thank you. Pike County is a rural county, about 15,000 population. We are actually bordered by the Illinois and the Mississippi River. We have a few providers in our county, and I believe the idea is supposed to be that we're pretty well covered, but in reality, there's a lot of our county that, they might have internet, but it's pretty spotty and inconsistent. Actually, often here in my own office, and I'm in Pittsfield, the county seat, I can have struggles with my internet. So I'm looking forward to finding out what our service actually is and how we can improve it. We do have another provider who's looking at coming in to bring service to us. So I just want to make sure that our county gets the best service that we can for our residents.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Jamie. So we're hearing some common themes here, which is sometimes the maps and the broadband serviceable locations that have been identified by the state may not seem to you all to be the truth on the ground. That's part of the reason we do the surveying and that Reid Consulting Group does the analysis. I think many of you have identified that the providers are circling around. So this program is really about trying to find the best partner for your goals. And then those letters of support that we will talk about. Robbie Macbeth will lead a discussion at the beginning of March about that. It's important that you don't just be necessarily random about giving these letters out, but that you really are selective so that you can ensure that if there is a competitive situation, that you're throwing your support behind the people that you think are going to do what they promise to do. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you. I'm going to turn it back to Reid quickly, and then we're going to turn it over to Tom Reid to do the Broadband 101.
We're going to send it to Tom now and we'll talk about this right at the end.
Okay, that's great. Thanks so much, Reid. Okay.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Reid. Appreciate everybody's time. I know some of you, this will be information you already know. Hopefully, as Adrian said, there'll be some information that's new to you as we go through the Broadband 101. So I broke it up into three pieces: some tech basics, why broadband remains an issue. Not on the agenda is why my dog always barks when I start presenting. And then broadband truth versus fiction, which obviously is a common theme. So tech basics. So speeds, just you'll see a lot of abbreviations. 1 Mbps is 1 million bits per second. If you add a G in there instead of an M, it's 1 billion bits per second. And if the speeds that you get when you download and upload to the internet are different, then it's asymmetric. So you're here like 100 by 20 as an example. That's 100 megabits down, 20 megabits up. It's asymmetric in that they aren't equal. So obviously then symmetric, upload and download speeds are the same. So if you had a 100 megabit connection, it would be 100 megabits down and 100 megabits up. So underlying infrastructure, the first thing we saw was a twisted pair copper that was installed back decades ago to provide telephone services. And that's how people get DSL, digital subscriber line. More recently, cable companies figured out, I don't know, probably 25, 30 years ago, how to do data communications across their coaxial cable plant. Now, really, that's the dominant purpose, is to provide cable modem services. And then, of course, the current favorite for, I think, just about everybody is fiber to the home. And this is literally glass, little glass strands. So why are we in this situation of terrible broadband, particularly in rural areas? I like to use a road analogy. That if you imagine we just stopped doing maintenance on roads for a few decades, in the first few years you have these giant potholes, but after 30 years, you'd basically have a goat path. And that's what we have in a lot of areas, is a digital goat path. That we've got old copper cables that were installed to provide telephone services. And that's fine, it's a good technology, but they're over 60 years old. They're way past end of life. And so it doesn't support good broadband. In a lot of places, it doesn't even support telephone services anymore. So really, a lot of our rural areas have been abandoned. They don't have broadband, a lot of them don't have cell phone service, and even their wired telephone services have stopped working in a lot of cases. So as we figure out how to fix it, what I always like to do is start with, well, what's our overarching goal and what kind of overarching architecture can we consider? So to me, the key objectives, and this is shared by the various programs that are out there, is we want to meet the future needs. We don't want to just meet today's needs. We want to have a 30-year time horizon. So we need to be able to meet the needs of 2055. So longevity, the technology you deploy needs to be able to last that long. And we want to reach 100% of households. We don't want to leave anyone stranded. So we look at the various technologies that people are talking about. There's low Earth orbit satellite like Starlink. There's a hybrid of wireless and fiber, and then there's fiber to the premise. So having a big picture really helps you make wise investments. So I like to go back in time, starting in 1990 when WWW actually started. Boy, we've all seen a lot happen since then in terms of various technology enablements. Well, during that same time period, speeds have increased dramatically. It's really been about 10-fold per decade. So back in 2000, the average well-served household could get a megabit per second. And back in 2020, it was up to 100 megabits per second. What's next on the technology curve? Yeah, who knows, right? It's amazing the various advancements that are happening. But what does that mean for broadband demand? Well, if you take that curve and continue it at 10-fold per decade, you end up at 1 gigabit in 2030, 10 gigabits in 2040, and 100 gigabits in 2050. Will it continue at that pace? It's hard to say. Most curves break at some point, but 1 gigabit per second, that's already common in a lot of areas. If you're lucky enough to have fiber, you're probably edging up here into the, you're getting up here into the low gigabits. So 1 gigabit, we're already there. 10 gigabits, some people already have that available to them today. So, the early parts of this curve seem very likely. So if you look at what the current technologies can do today, fixed wireless and satellite top out at about 100 megabits per second. Cable modem tops out at about 1 gigabit per second. Fiber, though, today will do 400 gigabits per second. So when we look at the infrastructure planning horizon, if we want to be able to meet the needs of 2055, in my mind, there's only one option, which is doing fiber to the home. So the federal government established a trigger for investment. If you can't get 100 megabit service, then you're eligible for investment. It's a good trigger for investment. Sort of like, which bridges do you want to fix? Well, you want to fix the bridges that are in the worst shape. Maybe you go for the D bridges and say we have enough money to do that. That's what they're saying is if you're below this really low threshold of 100 megabits per second, we should invest to get you higher speeds. What I recommend as a specification is that the technology you deploy should be able to do 10 gigabits per second. Unfortunately, this trigger for investment has become confused with the goal. So the trigger for investment is below 100 megabits, but you satisfy the requirement at 100 megabits. So the requirement to deploy is the same as the trigger, which doesn't make any sense. It'd be like saying we have a bridge that the civil engineer says is a D, and we're going to upgrade it to a D+. No, you wouldn't do that. You'd upgrade it to something better. So technology neutral is a term that gets tossed around a lot to try to get you to use fixed wireless. Technology neutral is a great term, but you have to be able to meet the needs of 2055. So fixed wireless has some, it's definitely being used in a lot of places, but I don't think it's really suitable as the primary broadband solution. In a flatlands area, you get pretty good coverage. You get into any place that has a lot of foliage or terrain, and you have much more limited coverage. The issue here, one of the big issues is foliage, that as you go up in frequency, you get more capacity. So at 5 gigahertz, you can drive a lot more traffic than you can at 1 gigahertz. Well, at 1 gigahertz, it'll go through a lot of leaves. At 3 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz and higher, it only takes a few leaves completely block that signal. GPS is down around 1 gigahertz. You can get GPS signal on the forest floor. You cannot get Starlink on the forest floor. It's a much higher frequency, won't go through the leaves. As an example, this is a picture from an ITU study. There's a dish way out here in this cityscape, and it's transmitting all the way to this location, about 20,000 meters, and they still have a marginal but usable signal. Same technology in the trees, it doesn't make it more than about 100 meters before it becomes completely useless because of the absorption by the leaves. Train, same kind of issue. It doesn't matter what frequency you're at, it doesn't matter what the salesman tells you, it won't go through a hill. There's some unique physics that happens sometimes with hills where you can get a lensing effect and a little bit of service. Wireless does not go through hills in any practical way to address the digital divide. And Starlink won't go through a hill either. So if you're in a terrain shadow from either fixed wireless or Starlink, you're not going to get the service. This is an example of a rugged area in Appalachia. There are 4 towers, these yellow stars located optimally and not very far apart. And what you can see in all these areas that are still white and the little red dots that are people's homes, those people can't see a signal from any of those towers. So it would actually, if you actually wanted to reach 100% of these people with fixed wireless, it'd probably cost you more than just doing fiber to the home. And even if you could reach everybody, it would collapse under its own weight. There's just not enough capacity in those frequencies to serve the whole population, even in a rural area. So fiber really is blades of glass thinner than a human hair. Sometimes it seems like magic, even for me who engineers some of this stuff. We use lasers across it to transmit long distances and high speeds. Fiber to the home today can go up to 10 gigabits per second. For middle mile routes, we're currently deploying 400 gigabits per second. And then you can combine multiple wavelengths onto 2 strands of fiber and get 19,000 gigabits per second using another technology called DWDM. So tremendous capacity. And we talk about upgrading from 25 megabits per second to 1 gigabits per second. That's 40-fold increase in capacity. So we look at a fiber to the premise project. Those are utility poles here in the dots. So there's the cost to pass the homes. You haven't connected anybody, but you've passed all the homes. And then there's a cost to serve for the people who subscribe. So you're running drops to their houses and installing the electronics. Tremendous capacity, very stable. It is expensive to do this, but the low operating costs are low, and you get at least 30 years out of this. You change out the electronics to get higher speeds, but you can start today being able to offer 10 gigabits per second. So it's going to be a while before you have to upgrade those electronics. And you also need it for other services. If you want fixed wireless in a lot of these rural areas, you need fiber throughout the area to be able to do that. In most areas, except for the really low population density, those grants help pay the cost to pass. And then from then on, it's really profitable at that point. Not hugely profitable, but profitable. So fiber is not fiber is not fiber. There's multiple ways you can deploy fiber to the home. And I won't go into a lot of detail here, but I just want you to understand when we give you pricing, we're pricing a specific and very robust architecture. So one of the approaches is what's called centralized split, where every home has its own fiber strand. Another is called distributed split, where you take a strand out and you split that signal multiple times. And another is called the distributed tap, where a single strand may connect up to 64 households and they just tap it all along the way. All of these work. All of them are going to provide a lot better service than most people have today. But what we recommend in budget is that centralized split. We think it gives the best long-term capacity picture. So what do these networks really consist of? You know, what most of us experience the internet is through our Wi-Fi connection. Well, that's going to be connected to a router or an optical network terminal. And then that connects to that convergence point that I was talking about. There'll be additional homes connected there as well. Then you've got a fiber service ring in your general area, which then ties back to that ISP's network in the area. And then that ISP, if they're a robust ISP, they're going to have multiple connections to the internet. So losing one connection doesn't disrupt services. There's a lot of capacity places, a lot of capacity choke points in the network, have to be well engineered. And there's a lot of places where you can get latency. Latency is just how long it takes, the delay between when somebody sends you a packet and you get it. That has a big impact on things like Zoom. If the latency is too long, video and audio communications tend to break down. So I give you all that background, just say I think specifications are really important. Imagine building a road. We wouldn't just say, build a road, we want people to be able to go 70 miles an hour. Now we actually talk about all the layers, specify out the materials, really have robust specifications. Broadband, we've mostly just told vendors, what speed do you promise? Oh, you'll provide gigabit. Maybe ask them what technology. Oh, so you'll do gigabit fiber, but nothing else. We don't learn anything else about the specifications. Unfortunately, we can't fix that right now. That's the way these programs are, but that's why I talk about these various issues in terms of the different types of fiber deployment. So any questions on this first part where we're just talking about the basics of the technology? If anything pops in the chat, let me know.
Yeah, you got a question in the chat, Tom. I'll read it for you if you want. We at the state, it's from Hillary Raines. We at the state are hearing a lot about upgraded and next-gen fixed wireless tech that don't have to rely on line of sight, and they cut down on interference and such things.
Yeah,
do you have an insight on those?
Yeah, it's a complete fiction. Field test it. Have somebody field test it. We field tested a lot of stuff. There was a company a ways back that said that they beam formed, that they would create a beam to every single user so we could have just tremendous wireless coverage. So, okay, let's field test it. It was no better than any kind of standard platform. Well, obviously they're just trying to sell products, but it's just not true. You can't beat the physics. You can't shoot through the leaves if you're above 2 gigahertz. It just won't do it. Not possible. It won't go around or over hills or through hills. The physics just isn't there. So there's all kinds of cool things they do with the antenna technology that improves it if you can actually see that tower. But non-line of sight fixed wireless is a fiction.
Sometimes in a city you can do it. Like they got clever ways to bounce signal off of like skyscrapers so that you can get to the backside of a building. But
yeah,
most of the time in a city, I mean, that's a very specialized case because in a city you've usually got fiber providers everywhere.
Right.
And so
No,
the
that's
fixed
a good
wireless
point.
is like a niche case for like mobile people who need more than just cell capabilities.
Yeah, so they make that work and then they can claim they have non-line of sight. Well, in some real particular circumstances. Not when you're trying to reach 100% of a population.
Got a question about Wi-Fi 6 versus Wi-Fi 7 technology.
I mean, we're going to keep seeing that the Wi-Fi technology advance. To me, Wi-Fi is in building or outdoor spaces on a campus. I really don't see Wi-Fi as a practical solution for providing actual broadband connectivity. Connectivity within your home, absolutely. Connectivity in a community broadband network in a high-rise building, yeah, absolutely. As a solution to solve the digital divide, very, very short-term solution, and going to be spotty coverage.
Yeah, another example you'll see often touted is like small towns who will do like a public Wi-Fi in their business district or something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got like a fiber backbone there so that you've got enough capacity under the covers to do that, that can be a really cool thing. But that's like you won't be able to do that down all the rural streets and roads that are outside of the town.
Right.
And you still need a good technology in there to support it.
Other questions in there, Sean?
Not yet.
Okay. So why is broadband even an issue? Why are we talking about this? Well, first, let's talk about why you need a subsidy. If we look at Chicago, we've got over 5,000 households per square mile. You get down to some of the smaller towns, Rockford's got 1,000 households per square mile. That's only 19% of the density of Chicago, but it's still a viable broadband market. You get down to some of these counties that are participating. McHenry County has 200 households per square mile, which is about 4% of Chicago. You get all the way down to Pike County, and we're talking about 9 households per square mile, or 2% of the density of Chicago. It's just not enough density to successfully build a network on your own dime if you're an ISP. You have to have a subsidy for that to make sense. So how low can you go? We talk about $100,000 a mile as a good rough budget number for fiber optic deployment. And obviously then you just divide it by how many houses you're going to pass with each mile. So if it's 20 houses you're passing in each mile, you're spending about $5,000 a location to pass it. If you've got 5 houses per mile, you're at about $20,000 a location. And some people go, well, that's just ridiculous. We shouldn't spend that. But if you look at it over 30 years, even at $20,000, that's $667 per year across those 30 years. It kind of brings it into perspective that maybe it is a reasonable thing to spend that kind of money. I think it is. If there's grid power there, then it makes sense that we can run fiber there. So the BEAD program that's underway right now is a 75% grant, 25% match. So if you look at, again, like at 10 households per fiber mile, 10,000 location, that means the ISP would have to come up with 2,500. The state would be providing them 7,500. ISPs generally are willing to spend between $1,000 and $3,000 per household. And it varies based, I think, mostly on how their financing works. We've seen some go as high as $4,000 a household. So $1,000 to $3,000 per household. So you see at 25 households per mile, just about all the ISPs are willing to compete for that. You get up here to 10 households per fiber mile, and you're starting to get close to what, you're not going to have as much competition in that area. There should be ISPs still willing to take that. But you get to the lower population density, and you need to spend $5,000 out of your own pocket as an ISP per location. Those are areas that may end up getting match waivers. So where does this all come from in the first place? Why do we care about rural telecommunications? Well, it really dates back to 1934 in the Communications Act, which was reinforced in 1996 with some new terms, but the basics are still there, that all people in the United States shall have access to rapid, efficient, nationwide communication service with adequate facilities at reasonable charges. That's how we ended up with telephone services in rural areas, is because of the Telecommunications Act, or the Communications Act of 1934. But since 1990, there's been a dramatic failure of public policy. The FCC has spent $100 billion given to the telcos serving these rural areas to upgrade their plan. And they haven't. They just haven't done it. There's been very few cases where those ISPs have actually done what they should have done with that money. We do find some telephone companies that took that money and plowed it back into their own plant. I don't know where this money went. We tried to track it down, but this is the kind of reason why community involvement is so important, is because public policy has largely failed our rural areas in terms of telecommunications. So as we look at BEAD and how it's going to unfold, so there's determined eligibility, and this is an approximated kind of a blend of multiple states, but Illinois has already completed determination of eligibility. We've already heard from folks that they think there's mistakes in that eligibility, areas that are unserved that are not in the program, and we're going to get to that because I'm sure that's true. But the eligibility has been determined at a federal level. So soon the state will be launching its grant-making process. And so that's going to take up most of 2025 in the grant-making process, unless the rules change. Then, unfortunately, again, unless the rules change, there's going to have to be environmental and historical assessments of those routes. And if you're building an aerial network, you also have to deal with the pole owners, usually the electric utilities, and the process of getting access to those poles. So deployment, unfortunately, we're probably not actually talking about connecting people until late 2026 or early 2027. Now, as y'all know, the Illinois Office of Broadband Development is a state agency administering the program. However, a lot of the requirements and things like the environmental historical assessments were determined by the NTIA, not the federal agency, not by the state. Same thing with determining eligibility. Every state I've worked with pushed back hard on some of the things that ISPs claimed, but were overruled by either the FCC or the NTIA. So if you've been involved in state-funded programs, you've probably seen things happen a lot more quickly, which really speaks to the quality of the Illinois team. So the BEAD program is going to reach a lot of unserved and underserved locations. Don't take anything away from it for that. It is going to reach a lot. Unfortunately, across the country, there are going to be a lot of unserved and underserved households that are not addressed by BEAD. Again, an important reason for community involvement. So it's not all dark and dreary, that there are some opportunities here. So the environmental historical, if you're in existing utility corridors, those reviews should just be waived. That's the intention of categorical exemptions. The NTIA has not interpreted that way. We're hoping there will be a change there. And if you're in existing road rights of way or underneath existing power lines, you should not have to spend a year or more doing environmental and historical assessment, in my opinion. And then the make-ready puzzle, if the ISP that wins an area already has things attached to the poles, the process is going to go a lot faster. It's called overlashing. So you're dealing with people like the electric cooperatives. So that would, if those things happen, then deployment's going to happen a lot earlier. We basically save a year in the schedule. So aerial deployment, they put up a metal strand and then they lash the fiber to it. Or in the case of overlash, they're lashing. Lashing is a wire that wraps around the cable. If they overlash, that means there's a cable existing already there and they wrap over top of it. So we're always assuming in our pricing that they are not overlashing. So this is what we're talking about in the communications and power space. So you've got the primary and secondary and then service wire to the house, and then below the power space is the communication space on the poles. So if we come in, there's a minimum clearance you have to have from the ground from National Electric Safety Code. If we come in and engineer a fiber route, we're going to go underneath. They put us even lower. So we get put lower on those poles, and right now that still looks okay, but if you've got a hill there, now you've violated the clearance of the National Electric Safety Code, and you'd have to replace both of those poles so that you could clear that hill from sufficient distance. So the other route, you'll see now that new communications capability is overlashed on an existing wire. So there's no clearance issues, a lot faster process. Or if it's the power company, like a rural electric cooperative doing, they can actually build it up in the power space, which again avoids replacing all those poles. Make ready is a pretty big deal. I mean, they've got to put a new pole in, take an old pole out, transfer all the services. So doing pole replacements is best to be avoided, but some places it's impossible. Of course, you also have some off-road cases. And it's extremely varied how much it costs. Now, there is an improvement in grid resiliency. You get rid of a lot of old poles, so that can be helpful. But it can range anywhere from $10,000 to $70,000 per mile. So we look at the total cost for an aerial build. We put that as $75,000 to $120,000. But you'll see the big issue is the make ready. So the fiber build's pretty predictable in terms of costs. The make ready is the big issue there. Big risk if you budget too low. If you're an ISP and you go after one of these projects and you said it was going to be $20,000 a mile for make ready and ends up being $50,000 a mile for make ready, it kills your project, which then just delays everything again. Underground is the other option. You can bore it, which is what we're showing here, trench it or plow it. In our pricing, we're assuming that it's in conduit. The big difference here is how much rock you hit. We've got it at 100 to 170. And again, the big difference here is how much rock you hit, $20,000 to $80,000 a mile. Any questions on Part B before we jump into reality of broadband? Sean, anything in?
I had somebody, and I kind of, you answered it there when you went to that slide, and also I kind of gave them an answer in the chat. They were asked about,
Okay.
We're focusing on aerial, what about buried? So we got to the buried, and I was just kind of tossing out a few more.
I actually have a related question. This is Travis again, if I could ask. So earlier, a few slides ago in the presentation, we were talking about price per mile being, let's just call it an even $100,000. And I'd asked a similar question about this a month or two ago in an earlier kind of intro webinar too. But some of the areas that we are, that have been identified as being underserved or not served in our county, you may cover one house if that at that distance. And so, is the priority on fiber with an alternate of fixed Wi-Fi, or are we saying fiber only is the priority?
My own personal belief is fiber is the priority. When you hit those really remote areas, you don't need to do the full. So that $100,000 a mile, probably building 96 strands of fiber, and then you run drop cables off to the house. Well, going down a road like that, I would suggest you come off of the main road there that passes it and just run drop cable. So you're going to be a much lower cost per mile to reach those. You might run 4 strands or 6 strands down that road, much less expensive to build than a 96 or 144 strand fiber cable. So I think there are strategies to even hit those really remote areas. I do know what you're talking about in some of these places. We've got one in our county here that's 4 houses and it's 5 miles. And yeah, you cannot justify building $100,000 fiber distribution down that road, but I think you can justify building drop cables down that road.
Yeah, because the other consideration I had too was the cost share with the ISP at 25%, for them, even over a 30-year time span, is still not enough time to recoup, their investment as well in some of those longer drops.
Yeah, and we go back, it's a really good point that some of the areas are so remote that a one-time subsidy is probably not going to cut it. That a lot of the rural areas supported for telephone services, it's an annual amount of money that they get from the FCC to keep the phones working in that area because it's just so remote. And I think that's likely to be needed in broadband. Right now, all the funding's one time, but I think the reality is we're going to need ongoing funding. And I don't think it even matters what technology you use to get there.
This could all change. Like there's been talk from that BEAD might be revised to put more emphasis on satellite. If
right.
that happens,
it's hard to say what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So now we get to one that seems to be near and dear to everybody: broadband truth versus fiction.
Oh, Tom, we had someone raise a hand. Heather, did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
I did. I wanted to circle back here. Could my video go on, maybe? Yeah, there it is. Hi. Regarding Tom's comment that it might require either ongoing funding or more than one, I'm thinking about the difference between capital, CapEx and OpEx for these operators. And are you suggesting maybe there should be a heavier front load to cover the CapEx so that it's not, so a portion of their ongoing expense is not just paying down the initial build out, or are you suggesting that there be different funds on the operating side? And maybe it's not even annually, maybe it's some other rhythm, if you will, or pace of reimbursement.
Yeah, I think it could happen. Both of those are good measures. So the one thing they can do in the BEAD program is waive the match for really low population density areas. And that would have a big impact for ISPs, not to have to borrow that 25%, deal with the interest payments on that 25% match. So that is a good one. Possibility is, gee, if you write it down enough, if you subsidize 100% of the build costs, have you now made it financially sustainable? There's still going to be a break point somewhere. 10 households per fiber mile, I think will get people at the 75%, 75-25. You go below that, it's going to be much harder for them to build a sustainable business plan below about 10 households per fiber mile. You get down to 5 households per fiber mile, yeah, you give them 100% grant, it might work. You go lower than that, it's probably still doesn't work. Easier for the rural electric cooperatives because they're not paying themselves pull rent. Easier for them to go to the lower population density areas, but a lot of the low population density areas probably will need an ongoing source of subsidy, which used to be the FCC Universal Service Fund. Right now, it's not engaged in the BEAD program.
Thank you. I think that, I don't know how deep we're going to get into policy during this process, like over the coming weeks and months, but it just seems like USF in general, this may be the time to actually make some substantial difference in that. And I would look forward to conversations on that. So thank you.
Thank you. So I was just going to talk about the fabric for a second. We used to work with E911 addresses as our source of address information. And boy, did we find out how difficult that is, because In most states, every county collects it on their own. They have different data standards, different quality of work. So we were really glad when the FCC came out with the fabric. So they contract with a company called CostQuest to identify every broadband serviceable location, BSL. There's mistakes in the fabric, but it's a lot better than what we had before. So units of geography, we'll paint census blocks. A census block, as many of you know, can really vary in size from 1 acre to 3,500 acres. And then you're going to see this color scheme from us, this rating tier. We use it in a lot of different ways. And the deep red is the worst, the dark green is the best, painting speeds that we either see reported by ISPs or that we measure with the Ookla speed test data. Then the other is something that the FCC adopted recently in just the last few years called H3. These are hexagons of different size. Most of the broadband work is done at resolution 8. Each H3 hexagon is 182 acres. So you're going to see a lot of maps with hexagons. That's where it came from, is this H3 spatial index. There's a lot of information out there online. But we do the analysis both ways. So one of the things that we're going to be delivering to you are our analysis of Ookla speed test data. Ookla is a funny company. A lot of people have never heard of them. But if you Google speed test, it almost always takes you to an Ookla-powered site. So what Ookla does is provide this free speed test platform, and then the back end sell the data. We believe this gives us very concrete availability maps, and we can also track progress over time. And it helps us reverse the burden of proof. So I'm going to show you some results from Missouri because we don't have Illinois yet, but I think we're going to see very similar things. Speed tests at maximum speeds in Missouri versus what the ISPs claim. So that's the big difference, is what the ISPs claim versus the reality on the ground. And we think the reality on the ground is very accurately measured. In Missouri, we had over 8 million speed tests. You can question the quality of any one speed test, but 8 million of them in aggregate with careful statistical analysis, it's pretty solid results. People tell you that rural areas, the people don't want high speeds. That's why it looks red. And that's just not true. Between a quarter and a third people take the top speed offered to them in rural areas. It's bad tests are just because of bad Wi-Fi. We can see bad Wi-Fi in the tests. We throw those out. So that's not it either. And people only run a test when there's a problem. People run a test when there's a problem, that's true, but then they run a test to see if it's fixed. And we only use the maximum speed ever seen at any given location. This is an area of Missouri called Bolivar, and I'm probably running out of time, but I'll try to step through this pretty quickly. And these are Ookla speed test locations, and you'll see the town of Bolivar doesn't look too bad. There's a fair bit of green there, but the area around Bolivar looks really bad. When we take it up to maximum speeds, Bolivar looks a little better. The rural areas still look really bad. So if you focus on that area, this is how we would rate it. But these hexagons are places, the green hexagons are places where ISPs are claiming they offer services that exceed the speeds of 100 by 20, which eliminate them from BEAD. So we're seeing this all over. State broadband offices fought hard against this, and in most cases lost. The before and after, you can see it real clearly. This is before broadband got deployed. After, a lot of people picked high-speed packages, and we can see it real clearly. So we can see the unserved areas, we can see the progress. This is that area, and we'll do this for you too. We'll show all areas that are already funded and whether there's progress there, and we are seeing progress. So that's that area of focus. If you look at this next map, right up here, we show that whole area as unserved, underserved, but ISPs have claimed it, and so it's not going to be eligible in BEAD. This is basically ISPs taking bites at the apple. There's a FCC reporting process. It's just whatever the ISPs report. There's no verification by the FCC. consumer challenges are very difficult. The BEAD challenge process by NTIA, again, ISPs had a chance to knock areas out, and very little latitude was afforded the states. This is not the fault of the Illinois Office of Broadband Deployment. This is from federal level policy decisions by FCC and NTIA. And so we're going to help you see this. We're going to show you locations that we believe are unserved but are not going to be hit by BEAD due to these ISP overstatements. So really critical that we keep paying attention to this because we don't want our rural communities to fall apart. Productivity will go up, average household income goes up, and increased tax revenues. This is well documented statistical truth about expanding broadband. And in most of the analysis that we've seen, you can really pay for it in 7 years or less in increased taxes. So I can open it up to any other questions.
There were two quick questions in the chat. One was asking if speed tests had been incorporated into Data Quality Act's fabric. And I'm pretty sure speed test is not heavily weighted in most federal stuff, right?
No.
In
no,
fact,
NTI originally said that they were going to use any source of data, and including Ookla speed tests. And then in a period of about 10 months, NTI completely walked that back and said, we're using the FCC maps. Then they came out with this terrible challenge process. It's extremely difficult for people to participate in, that mostly it was ISPs claiming more territory.
I also had a question to mention RDOF, just its effect on eligibility. And
yeah, if an area is funded for RDOF, it's not eligible. If it's funded for the FCCE ACAM, it's not eligible. If it has a state award, it's not eligible. We're really concerned about some of the RDOF areas about whether they're actually going to get deployed. Same with EACAM, but there's nothing we can do about that eligibility. We can, with that Ookla data, see if anything's happening in those areas, and we'll show that to you for your counties.
I'm going to cut you off. I know Travis asked a very complicated multi-part question, and I'm hoping you and Sean can copy and paste it and maybe talk to him offline.
Okay.
So thank you, Travis. You clearly are asking terrific questions, but I don't mean to cut the conversation short, but I need to give Nancy some time to talk about the community survey. And then Reid and I will just have 2 minutes of wrap up just to talk about some logistical issues. So thank you all for a super engaged conversation. As I said, every time I see this presentation with Tom, I learned something. You will get the slides afterwards. So, and there is of course the ability to ask questions once you either look at those or want to listen to the recording again if you have the time. Okay, I'd like to turn it over to Nancy. She has been our program partner in Illinois. We are up to 47 counties that have gone through a program of one type or another. So I think Reid was right when he said we're almost at half. But Nancy's been our partner all along, running the survey process with our communities, and I'm really proud of our partnership and want to recognize her and turn the meeting over to her. Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks, Adrienne. Great presentation, Tom. I'm also very happy to kind of spend that time and think about all of those really important focus points. And I think this conversation around surveying the communities, having conversations, the surveying as a foundation for engagement that you're going to do across your county with others and key stakeholders. All of that's going to tie together really nicely with the Broadband Breakthrough Program and what you have in store for you in terms of learning and information gathering from your residents, business, farms, and ag entities, and your community assets, your public assets. Included in that is your anchor institutions. And those things are essential when considering what kind of broadband infrastructure deployment you're going to want to plan for. We know that data should drive a lot of these decisions, but it's also this idea of you can always say, what does a community need? What does a county need? And look at data, and that's wonderful. But complementing that with collecting information about what are people wanting and what are they willing to throw in some skin in the game for, et cetera, is a really good component to include when you're doing your planning and your proposal development for your broadband. So we're going to go through a little bit about what that entails, and we're happy here at Illinois Extension to drive that surveying process with you, and it'll be some hands-on teamwork together. This is just an overview of what I'm going to cover today. It can be kind of seen here as, I've got like some check marks here of like, what are we going to do for you? You don't have to worry about designing this. Like Adrian said, we have 47 counties who have gone through this surveying process, and that's wonderful news for you because you're not a guinea pig at all, and you're going to get something that's really meaningful and a tool that works. We are going to use some sampling. Yes.
I just wanted we're seeing the presentation screen.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Cool. Thank you. And, we're going to help you with sampling and coverage and, of course, the analysis and the reporting, all the things that would cost you thousands of dollars with consultants. We're just going to have that be a part of this program for you so that you can focus on the community engagement, the conversations, and really own this survey as yours and get excited about it because people can explain what's going on and also what they intend to use the broadband infrastructure for. Like all of those quality of life conversations go here and will really strengthen your narrative for your proposals and also just strengthen your plans and know that people are going to buy into those plans. There's a few other benefits to the survey. And I think when we send the follow-up today, we're going to include some of those bullet points. Adrian and I have had a little bit of back and forth about like, what are all the benefits of having this county survey? And folks may not realize half of those. And I think I'm just going to put those into the email today so you can kind of spend time looking at those and we'll just go forward. No reason to sell you something at that point. You'll see some of that later and we'll move forward. What you're going to want to start to do is think about how many hands are going to make light work in this process. Who represents your population in your county and your communities, organizations that are going to act on the results of what you find out in the survey, and those groups that are really going to be interested in making sure they are covered with the deployment and the conversation. And so all of those people can also help get the word out about the survey. You don't have to say that this is one organization's survey, this is our ED organization or our NGO or our county board or whatever. You can say that this is a whole new group, connect your county group, which makes up 20 organizations, and that everybody can feel like it's theirs. And so the libraries and such, all of those organizations that can you guys can sort of divvy up contact and provide some materials that they can use to promote it and make sure that everybody gets to provide input. And so I have on here sort of this idea of like how you might list out those key organizations, get those point of contacts and contact info for them, and then who on your team is going to reach out to them. Again, many hands make light work. And so you all have done an initial sort of round of team building for this program. And so it's time to now look at that next like outer circle of those who are involved in your team and get them involved. And so I give you a little bit of a list here for your consideration. And so this list, look at this and think of how you might do like a T-chart with putting the name down, the point of contact, what their contact information is, and who might reach out to them, but consider all of these groups. and that can help you kind of churn and get some ideas on how you might want to do your distribution. And that's going to be really helpful. So the initial team building, the initial communications is what's going to make your survey successful. And so when we're designing this together, we've got the design pretty much 99% done, right? But from you, we're going to need you to give us some input on that introductory text. It's going to have to really look like it's for your county. We provide some language for marketing. I've got a model news release that you can use for local news. And the partner logos, we've got those from our side. We're hoping you can have like one big logo that kind of just is representing your initiative and your groups that are working in this. Each team is going to get a unique survey URL. And so that's going to be similar to what I've got down here as what I'm going to demo for you today. This go.illinois and then your county name and the name of your survey or something like that. And we'll get you a really nice URL to use as you get the word out to those who you wish to take the survey. And when you do that, you're going to say to them, put this URL into a browser when you are at the location that you would like to take the survey from, because we're gauging broadband infrastructure and we want to see, you're going to be taking a speed test along with providing us information. And so that's the link to drive the base survey, which I will put in the chat shortly so you can also get the feel for it. And a little bit of information about the methods. What we do as a baseline is this convenience sampling and cluster sampling. Random sampling, you're going to need to let me know if that's what you want to do. In a way, it can be more cumbersome, but in a way, if you do it, then you know to what extent your findings would be statistically significant. But even with convenience and cluster sampling, which with the cluster sampling, we provide some coverage, ongoing coverage information for you so you can in real time see how well you're doing in covering all of your geographic areas and meaningful areas of your county when you're collecting these responses. And so the convenience also is just, you might be pushing it out on social media. You're getting it out to all the places that it's a little bit easy for people to see. But then you're going to go back around and you're going to start cluster sampling where you know you need to gather more responses. And we're here to help you do that. And despite that, once you've gotten to a certain number of responses, you are going to get a meaningful community sentiment on what the infrastructure is currently doing or not doing for your county. And so again, these are just some points for your consideration around the, around the distribution. Going to want to make sure that those networks represent your population, that people aren't left out. You're going to get some social media language to use. You're going to want to utilize social media. I think a lot of people are aware of how to do those targeted social media campaigns. So that would be a great idea to try to do those. Excuse me. Provide you some language so that you can circulate some emails as well and have a flyer and the press release. Going to want to consider doing some interviews. You can use that short URL when you're speaking on the radio, for example. And you're going to want to also include a phone number that they can call if they will need to call you and take the survey. That's one of the things that you are going to need to do is have folks be able to call a number if they can't take the survey online. And so think about where in your county might be a great place for someone to receive a phone call and say, oh, do you need a paper copy or would you like to take this? And you might also be wanting to consider some of those like students that like high school students or other types of volunteers that might want to get involved in this. What a great experience for them to get some professional experience doing like community surveying and engagement. And don't forget any sort of events and expos that might be going on in your county, and have that information there, like a big flyer or an announcement talking about the survey. And I provide some messaging for you here on this slide, as well as the other slide. Sorry, I'm having an issue here. Hang in there, Nancy. Okay, so here's more language. I know you're not supposed to put a bunch of words on here. This is just for you to pull off. Why is broadband important? Some of these conversation points are going to be important for you to pull off of here and use. I just wanted that to be available to you. Of course, these slides are going to be available to you as well. If you're doing a flyer, what are the things that you want to consider that go on that flyer? I've put that on here for you. And then here's a timeline, like a checklist. Some of the dates I've put on there for you. When are we launching? When are we closing the survey? And when can you expect to have findings, etc. Taste of survey results. You're going to be able to see a breakdown of the different types of respondents, whether it be residential, business, ag entities, community assets, and what was their internet access situation. Those who hope to use the internet connection to do certain types of things, e-commerce, remote work, telehealth, all of that is listed in the survey results as things that you can pull off and use and say, we know we had a lot of feedback. We know that people want to use the infrastructure for these certain economic activities or quality of life activities. Okay, so let me demo this. You notice I go, wait, it's probably the fastest I've ever done this presentation. And so I'm happy to maybe spend like 5 minutes or so talking when we meet next week to kind of give a recap, remind everyone what we're trying to do in order to launch, and then take some questions and concerns as well. But let me demo this for you. And when you've got a lot of windows open, let's see, here we are. Let me just share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so you all can probably see this is a test survey. And if you want to key it into your browser, it's go.illinois.edu county broadband survey. And I'll put that in the chat real quick too. I think that you guys might want to touch it. Go.illinois.edu/county broadband survey. And so if you just highlight that with your mouse and copy paste it into a browser, you can follow along. But this is the survey. In the beginning, I've got some bullet points here that could guide you on some of that introductory text. And of course, your logo will be up here with the rest of ours as well. And right out the bat, we're asking folks to let us know what kind of respondent they are. So a lot of folks will say it's from their home, but you really should be trying to get responses that are from businesses. Think maybe flyers going down your downtown. You know, rural downtowns need that public Wi-Fi eventually, right? So it's, you know, maybe you can talk about that and drum that up, and then they can provide input, which will go right into plans and proposals, and you can let them know that farms are huge. We want to be able to include farmers, include landowners. let them know they can control their situation. Let them know that they can consider their vertical assets in terms of hosting equipment, and that they are part of the picture. And the community and public buildings as well. This could be, of course, your local government facilities, schools, etc., hospitals, libraries, but also anything else that you consider an asset. You're going to want everybody to have that connectivity and all of the opportunities that come with it. Here, they need to then, again, when you're promoting this, they need to take the survey from the location that they are entering it for. They're answering for themselves, but they're also answering from where they primarily are connecting to the internet. And so we want that address there. And they will be taking a speed test as well. And we want to know how fast and reliable and affordable that connection is. And so the address is key. And we do see that a lot of folks do enter that. The majority of survey takers understand, and they do enter that because the communications have been spot on for that. And they get to say whether or not you can share the address when you're working with partners, broadband providers, in trying to set up that deployment. And again, just making sure, are you really taking this survey from this address? You're going to be taking a speed test. We want to know. So they just have to promise that they really are. And if they say no, they can still answer a lot of the questions. And we can take that into account. But of course, we're wanting them to say yes. And providing the email address is always a great way for you to then be able to follow up with everybody and provide like a town hall or like a presentation on the results of the survey. We ask what your existing access situation is. Do you have your local router where you are that you can connect to the internet? Or do you only rely on your cell phone or like a hotspot? Or do you have satellite internet? Or do you have nothing? So those are the 4 kind of ways we want to see, and people can check more than one, and we can know kind of how it's broken down in your county in terms of the access situation. And then we have a question here about devices. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see those. It's pretty uncanny these days. We've got lots of things hooked up all at the same time, right? And needing that high-speed internet so that everything works properly. And so here it all is. And of course, we have other in case we missed something. And then we want you to just sort of list what in your mind, what you think is all connected at once at the same time. And so moving on, what would you be willing to pay for high-speed internet? And then the different ways that we use our broadband infrastructure in general. Are you currently using it for these purposes? Do you hope to use it for these purposes? Do you not have an interest? And these are the different ways that you could be using it. Do you feel like there's a significant amount of providers at your location? My apologies, not sure why. There we go. This just speaks to that competition, and if you feel like you have choices. And tell us your broadband story. So if I back up here, I have additional questions now that really come from okay, so like if they, for example, if they are a public entity, we want to know what is it? Is it a hospital? If they're a farm, we want to know the situation. Are they a tenant, an operator, etc.? And then just depending on the access, also there are a few additional questions that will appear. And how, for farms and businesses, how well is your current access supporting your connectivity needs in terms of business functions, precision ag, or family life? And we ask that for not just the wired, but also the cellular. As we know that there's folks out there that are relying on their cellular connection to do a lot more than what's just thought of initially with just having a phone, right? Especially if you're doing some farm operations, that might be all you have, and we want to capture that situation. And so we ask the question about voice services and data services as well. And, you know, different parts of the state have some spotty cellular connections as well. And so how much more important would it be to have good internet connectivity where cell service doesn't work, not just at parks, but places where, you know, it's forest, but there could be a lot of economic activity going on, or, you know, other types of terrain situations, or just spotty cell service in general, you know. So that would be important to capture. And so we try to capture that. And then we ask farmers to really get into the nitty-gritty of how they are currently or hoping to use certain types of precision ag tech with their connectivity. We want to know. So there it all is. And we just think that's quite important to know, especially here in Illinois. You know, where are you with your precision ag tech, and how can that be further supported by broadband infrastructure deployment? And would you be willing to host wireless internet equipment on your property? So far, you know, Adrian mentioned 47 counties, between 60 and 80% of farmers say they're willing to host internet equipment on their property, knowing that that would complete the picture for their county and that coverage of connectivity. Then we ask
Nancy, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. We are going to
We're out of time.
Wrap. I know, and we just want to do a couple of other things. But I think what you're getting is this is a very thorough survey. Takes, depending on your answers, can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 minutes to we provide both paper copies. We make those available, though the team would have to actually input those results in order to get them counted. But I do want to make sure that people know that those paper copies are available. One good idea is sometimes people hand out business cards with the survey link on them, sometimes better than a whole flyer. And look, responses have been up to 5% of a small county. We got that in Schuyler. We got, I think, Reid, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Massac County that got over 1,000 responses?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and we had literally 500 of a town of 1,000 also do survey results. So really, we're doing all the work for you except the marketing of the survey itself, which is what Nancy really talked about at the beginning. So I'm going to just have Reid and I wrap up with a couple of slides just to tell you what you're going to be getting now and what you're going to be getting soon. Reid, please go ahead and put your last two slides up. And thanks, guys, for hanging in there. It's a long hour and a half. Go ahead, Reid.
Sure. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Nancy and Tom. This is just outlining what you can expect in terms of communication from us each week. So at a minimum, you'll receive one email per week, just kind of with reminders of where we're at in the program. But in weeks where we have webinars, which is a little over half, I think, the majority of weeks, you'll get two. So at the start of the week, like one sent out yesterday afternoon, you'll get a description of what the webinar topic is, the speakers, and what we hope to accomplish during the session. And then in the follow-up, you'll receive the recording, any slides, resources, links like the survey test link. That'll be in this follow-up email. And that will come after the presentation on Wednesday. And along with any reminders of tasks that both the program team is completing and working on, and tasks that the county team can be working on, in this case, starting to think about that survey launch process with Nancy. And as always, my contact information and the contact information of the team is at the bottom of those emails. Please be in contact with any questions or things you're not sure about or need help with. Always happy to help. And if you don't know who to reach out to me first, and we'll get it figured out. And then I'll go to the next slide to wrap up, and Adrienne's going to take this part.
So one of the things that we do, we're really lucky to have our partners in Illinois who have been involved in these programs in the past and acted as a community liaison, which means when you have individual meetings with the Reid Consulting Group, your community liaison will be a part of those meetings. They're really there to be a communications conduit. If you have any questions that haven't been answered, that they can't answer, they funnel those questions, of course, to the appropriate people on the team to get back to you. They're really another eyes and ears for you between your team and the people who are running the program. So I've listed the people here. This will come in the slide, so you don't have to make note of it. But I'm really appreciative of the staff of the Illinois Broadband Lab and the Illinois Office of Broadband and the Benton team to be a part of this program going forward. Each of you is assigned a team, a person for your team. So I just want to reiterate, we did sort of steamroll Nancy into a very short presentation. And so she will pick up at the beginning of next week when we talk about state and federal funding. So this is an overview of what funding resources will be available, and we're very happy to welcome people from the Illinois Office of Broadband, as well as I think it's Massac County, who's going to talk about their community requirements or their community support priorities. I'm sorry, Boone County, excuse me. We're going to talk about their community support priorities. So it'll be about an hour, and we'll make sure to stay closer to time. But again, thank you all for hanging in there. Super appreciate. Only 4 minutes over, but we'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Central Time. Okay, take care, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.